Hi everybody, welcome back to the Desmworks channel, and we're back on with the Ducati ST2 build again, and today should be the last mechanical video, so we should have this completed from a mechanical perspective at the end of this video, and then it just leaves all the cosmetics to do. So as I talked about in the last video, let's go through what I've got left to do. Okay, so the new brake lines have turned up, front and rear. I've also got the new clutch hose, so I'll be getting those fitted today. Calipers have been cleaned up and split, and all the pistons and everything changed. I've left the original pads in there because they're actually got a lot of life left in them, so they must have been recently changed. The rear brake setup has been cleaned and again checked for operation, and everything's looking good on there. I've cleaned out the front master cylinder reservoir, painted the cap, and just given it a quick push through with clean oil, so that's all ready to go. I've got a new set of domino grips, and then some instantaneous connections for the fuel lines, because if you'll remember from when we stripped them down, the ST2s have the permanent screwed on type connections, so I wanted a set of these just to make it a bit easier to take the fuel tank on and off without losing fuel. And then I haven't got them here because it's in the car, but I've got oil to go in the bike, and I've got antifreeze as well because the bike is completely dry at the moment. And I've also got some Brembo Sport Evo brake fluid. Okay, so what's the first job we're going to do? Well, as it's already on the bike, what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip out the clutch line that goes up to the master cylinder there, and then we'll fit the new aftermarket HEL line or HEL line. First job I need to do is take off the old line, so I need to undo this bleed banjo there, and then undo this banjo bolt up the top here, and then carefully unscrew it, making sure not to spill too much fluid, and take the line off. Let's do that. Okay, so that's the line off. Haven't had any spillages. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pop off the slave cylinder so that I can just empty out any remaining old fluid that sits in there. So let me just grab a I think it's a size 5 Allen key. Okay, that's that cleaned out of any old fluid. Effectively just push it off, take it off and just push the piston in and out just to get rid of the fluid, and that's what comes out of it. It's filthy. So the HEL kit comes with 2 brand new banjo bolts, but it doesn't come with a bleed banjo that we need at the bottom to make this easier to bleed, so I'm only going to be using one of those, but I will be using the new crush washers that sit in there. So one new banjo bolt and crush washers, and then the old existing one. And then we've got the clutch line. Okay, so line tightened up, runs down back behind our fork leg, between the frame and the radiator bracket, and then down this frame spar till it hits the slave cylinder. I will tie wrap this up. It's got this connection which I'm assuming is for a P-clip, which doesn't exist on the Ducatis. They don't use P-clips for their clutch lines, so I'll just stick that out the way up there, and then I'll tie wrap it to the frame so it's just hidden nicely out the way. Okay, so just need to bleed it, so let me get some clutch fluid into the reservoir, and then we're going to bleed it just down here. Okay, so clutch line is fitted and bled. You'll see I had to crack the banjo bolt there. That's because if you look at this, that was trapping air, so that was giving me a really weak lever. I was not getting any fluid come out of the piston. So what you got to do is give it an early release path, because it won't push all the way down to the bleed nipple because it's a lower point. So once I'd got the air out of there, that meant I had a full master cylinder and it was easier to push the fluid down. And then just bleed the slave cylinder and the line via the little bleed nipple here. So you'll see that by just working your lever in when you've got your bleed nipple open, allows fluid to come out. What you've got to do is close that bleed nipple just as you're getting towards the end of your travel, so that you're keeping a good positive lever, and then let it back out while it's closed, and that stops you drawing any air back in via there. I mean, that might be teaching you to suck eggs, but it's just, I thought I'd best be clear about that. So clutch lever is all sorted. I've checked around on the other side with the clutch. I'm getting a good 1.5 millimeters of movement, so sorted on that front. Okay, let's get the calipers fitted to the bike. Unfortunately, I'm missing one of the bolts for these. I must have misplaced it while I was either moving stuff around or building the bike, so I've got some titanium ones on order. So as we're not in a position to get it on the road anyway, I'll at least get the calipers in place so that I can fit the lines and bleed them. And now stick the master cylinder on. Okay, let's just grab the brake lines and put them in. So I've gone for a race type setup, which is a line per caliper. So 2 types of banjos, a 15 degree and a 90 degree. This goes at the caliper end, so it's going to be down like that, and there's 2 of them. But when you hold them together, one is slightly longer than the other. So the longer line is for the left caliper as you sit on the bike, and this is for the right caliper as you sit on the bike. Banjos again. Comes for a double up the top in place of the single that would have been on the bike originally. And 2 for the bottom. There's a little tang that stops see, that little tang stops the banjo from going past when you tighten it up, so it sort of acts as a locking mechanism. Okay, so lines are run. I will be tie wrapping these together. The challenge I've got at the moment is this bracket here is what normally would have held the standard brake lines in place. So what I'll be doing is tie wrapping the lines together just up the top. Once I get them into a sort of good position with the master cylinder, and then I'll secure it around that piece with plenty of excess line at the bottom, just to make sure that it take account of fork movement and everything like that. Okay, so what I need to do, just pop that cap off, top up with some brake fluid, bleed the lines and bleed the calipers. Sorry, so my camera battery died while I was bleeding this, so I'll just give you an overview on what I do to get the fluid down into the caliper so we can get to a point where we can bleed it. So I use a standard 60mm syringe, and all I do is I connect it onto the bleed nipple and then just put a slight vacuum and pull fluid down from the master cylinder and the reservoir until I get a relatively clear stream. You're not going to eliminate all the air. Then I seal this one up. Then I do the same on the shorter line on the right hand side. Once that's done, I go to traditional bleeding. So I just stick the long bleed line on there. And then same as we did with the clutch slave cylinder and master cylinder setup, is just as you pull the lever in, you open up your bleed nipple. As you get into the end of the lever travel, close it back up. Now I've got good clean fluid in there, and the lever bites within sort of a centimetre of travel, so I've got a good firm lever there. And that's our twin line setup going down to the calipers. I'm just going to stick the bleed nipple caps back on. Right, I was coming to get ready to do the rear brake line and master cylinder. I noticed that the boot that sits around the plunger had fluid coming out of it. When I've just pulled that off, you can see that the master cylinder has failed. Now I can only assume that, looking at the amount of rust in there as well, it's the period of time that's been sat outdoors, and also by the colour of the brake fluid, where it probably hasn't had a decent service in a long time. So I'm not going to be able to do the rear line today because I'm going to have to rebuild that master cylinder, so I'm going to need to buy the parts to do that. I'm going to have to strip it down and check that there's no damage to the actual barrel of the master cylinder as well, because if it's scored or got corrosion in it, it'll be unusable and I'll have to source an alternative. So a little bit frustrating, not going to be able to do the rear brakes today, but got a PTFE guide. You've got the seal that goes in the top here with the feed from the reservoir. Then you've got the plunger, which at the end of it has got the seal, which is detachable, so that little piece there. And then the spring, which the plunger operates in against the body. And a circlip that holds it all in, and then the boot that goes on the end to seal it all. So usually in a rebuild kit you get all of these components. I've had a look at the body. The body inside is clean, so hopefully no issues with that. You should get a new one of the boots as well, so I'm going to order up one of those, and I'll do that offline and put that back together. So I've got two CPC fuel connections to go in the lines so that we can leave the pump permanently connected to one side and the throttle bodies to the other side without losing pressure or fuel spillages, which means you can remove the tank quite easily. So I'm going to be putting one fitting. Let's have a look actually. So they're going to go like so. Yeah. So I'm going to be putting one fitting just here, and then I'll fit the other fitting just there. So it keeps them away from one another and gives me enough line to be able to maneuver. So what I'm going to do is cut the line straight in half there and about there. I think that would work out just about right. Yeah, so let's do that. There we go, instantaneous lines now fitted, which just gives me better maintenance options. And these are both non-return, so when they disconnect, no fuel should get out. So similar to the ones on the standard fuel tanks of the 916 range onwards. But that will make it a lot easier for maintenance for me. Okay, what I'm going to do is just put the fuel tank back on. But before doing that, I'll just screw these two lines on. There we go. Fuel lines now fitted. And if I just drop the tank, yeah, they sit just right, so no trouble there at all really. Next job, we'll get the grips on. So I've gone with Domino as very similar to the Ducati spec ones. So we've got 2 diameters, throttle tube, and then the standard clip on. That's the first one on. There's just some adhesive in there that will dry off, so that will firm up after a while. Camera run out again. Battery, I'm assuming it's where the weather's so cold, so the throttle side's on. It's not as great a fit as the OEM ones because it doesn't come over the actual lip of the throttle mechanism. I might actually see if I can find an original pair of the Ducati ones. So that glue is just drying up in there, and that'll be all good. Oh yeah, I don't use any special glue, by the way. I just use carpet and flooring glue. It served me perfectly well in racing. Okay, ignoring the back brake that still needs to get done, that's pretty much everything mechanically on the bike. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to top up the oil, put a new oil filter in, fill up the antifreeze, and then hopefully we'll see if we can get it running. Let's get an oil filter onto the bike. Top the oil up via the filler port here. I've just taken the cap off, and we need to get it to the top line because when it runs, obviously the level will drop slightly because the engine's completely dry. Okay, topped up to just below the top line. After I've given it a turnover and a start, I'll check that and re-top that up anyway. Okay, I need to stick some antifreeze in the bike, so using Halfords, which is like a local motor factors in the UK. Being that it's winter, I'm going to go with a 50-50. So that's 50% of the concentrate and 50% water. So let me just grab some water. Right, I bled it up to the point where it's leaking out of here. What I've just done is taken off the bleed bolt that sits on the side of the head here now, and I'm just going to fill it up some more because it's allowed a load of air back out. Antifreeze come out of there, so that's now tightened up. So we know we've got water or antifreeze to this sort of level in the engine, and that's where you probably won't be able to see it, but the water is about here in the radiator, which is So it's roughly about here in the radiator. It's roughly in line with that bleed piece. So what I need to do now is slowly top this up until I get all the air out of the radiator. Once I'm comfortable that that's done, I'll put the radiator cap on and then fill the expansion flask. Okay, radiator is topped up, and that's the backflow from the radiator. It still has about 1 litre worth of fluid, so it should take 3.5 litres in here. So I've taken it to the 2 different airlock stages. It's now sat at the top of the radiator. The manual advises to give it a start, let it expel any air, and then re-top it up. So what I'm going to do is connect up the battery. Our oil level stayed the same, which is nice, which means we don't have a water to oil leak at the moment. So let's get this battery connected up. I'll chuck in a little bit of fuel into the fuel tank and we will try a start. Okay, so I've got about 3 litres worth of fuel in the bike now. Keys. So manual ready to go in case I've got any problems. Let's get the right key. Okay, dash is powered up and we've got 1 line of fuel. We've got noise from the fuel tank. Let's put some choke on. Let's see what happens. Oh, we have life. So just starting to burn off some of the oily bits from where I put it together. Nice, really clean. Absolutely no smoke coming out of the exhausts. The exhaust coating is just going to smoke a bit as it cures. This is where all the noise was when I first got it, and the clutch noise is completely gone. Sounds really good. No signs of leaks anywhere. Let it run and get a little bit up to temperature. High beam doesn't work, bulb must have gone. One indicator works. Front indicator not working. Idle's a little bit on the low side. Right, just let it get up to temperature now. I'll switch off and I'll come back to you once I've finished running it. Okay, so it's a few hours later after the run and the bike has cooled down. So what I've now done is I've topped up the expansion stroke reservoir for the coolant system all the way to the max line, and that took the final litre that I had in the container. So that is 3.5 litres in the engine, the radiator and this reservoir, so that's the total capacity. I've checked the oil level and that's been topped up as well, so it dropped to just below minimum after the run, so that's now back up to just below maximum and the engine is cold. What else have I done? Those of you that might have noticed when I started it up had no neutral light on. That's because I was in a false neutral between 4th or 5th gear, so the neutral light works now, so that's all sorted. And that's pretty much it. So the good news is it's a runner. The bad news is I still have to do all of my rear brake following the fact that we've just found out it's failed. So I think I'm going to call that a wrap for this video. We have got the bike pretty much back together. All that's left to do now is the cosmetics. Okay, so there we have it. First run done and dusted, and really good to see after all of that work that the bike has actually started back up again. Some small little electrical gremlins that have come to the surface where we've had the bike apart and put back together, so it looks like I need a new high beam light, which it was to be expected. I might break the odd bulb here and there, and I also need a new indicator bulb on the front left hand side, because as you saw when we tested that, it was clicking really quick, and that's because obviously it's not got the correct load going for it because one of the lamps is blown. So I'm really chuffed with that. The bike is sounding great. Idle's a little bit low, but we'll get that adjusted. I'm really looking forward to getting the bodywork sorted out, because we are close to having that back on the road, which will be absolutely fantastic. I'm really looking forward to being able to ride that. So I'm going to call that video a wrap here. There'll be a few weeks before you'll see another video on the ST2, assuming that the lockdown for the UK ends on the 2nd of December. We are booked into the paint booth on the 13th of December, but that is dependent on how the chap who runs that business, what slots he's got booked in for the cars and everything he does. So if the lockdown's impacted his work program, I might lose that booking and might have to push that back. But I've got some more content coming up on other bikes anyway. What you might see before the next video is I might have this off the ramp and stored away elsewhere, so that I can get onto the 1098S. I think we need to get that serviced because it's the end of the track day season, so that's probably going to be my next set of videos, is getting the 1098 serviced following its use this year. So hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, chuck us a like. If you've got any questions or comments, stick them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell down in the bottom right hand corner, and I look forward to making more content for you guys to view. See you then. Cheers. Bye.